Touchdown, Oregon!
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, children of all wages, welcome back to the show. And I promised that I would be more consistent with it. And for now, I'm keeping that promise. So, lots to talk about today. We're going to discuss the Oregon-Wisconsin game on Saturday. All the thoughts and reactions that have to do with that. And though we are in week 10, I believe, going on week 11 or something on the year for the season, now that we're heading into the November month, where every game, of course, is getting even more important than the last, especially compared to September. And October, it gets a little bit more important. But now we're in November, where every game has playoff consequences. Playoffs are at play here. And so we're just going to check in and see what's going on with the team. And, of course, all the dumb landing speculation that's going on in the greater college football discussion due to the coaching carousel that is massive right now due to a lot of firings, as Brian Kelly instead was just fired. But first, I am going to introduce this segment I discussed last week, and because I'm talking to nobody on this channel, in this stream, the rousing consensus was that we should have this segment. And that rousing consensus was me. A 1-0 vote, unanimous. So we're going to do this. And if you like it, great. We're going to continue to do this until I'm not working football season anymore. And if you don't, well, luckily there's about 1 to 2 weeks left. Maybe a week or two more, because I have still yet to know if I'm going to be covering the playoffs this year. So, if you don't like it, tough it out for a few more weeks tops. This might be the only week and next week. So, you'll just have to suffer and go through it. But, right now, we are going to look into the potential future of college football. Not just Duck football, but college football. However, like I said last week, there have been some Duck commits that have played down here in San Diego. So it's very likely a couple of these guys you might see in Eugene in future years. So let's get into it. We are going to Montgomery High School, where they take on the Hilltop Lancers on Senior Day. And that is Billy Trollinger, who is starting to get D1 offers. Now we're going to start the game here. Second play of the game for a 69-yard touchdown from Octavio Bonilla to Julian Moran. Luckily, that screen worked out. I hope the Ducks see that one day. But then Montgomery responds with Kasim Williams going 67 yards to tie it up at 7-7. But then the Lancers clap back with a run of 28 yards by Leo Mendoza. This touchdown in particular put it at 21-7. Now we're going to go into the second half. In the start of the third quarter, Bonilla once again hits a 26-yarder, once again to Moran, to put them up 28-7. Unfortunately, it's going to be the last time the Lancers score, but Montgomery is going to try to keep the comeback moment alive by going 94 yards on a kickoff return from Kasim Williams yet again. He was trying to single-handedly keep this game in reach for the Aztecs. And now it's 28-14. We got Isaiah Menya Malihan going 45 yards on a TD scramble, making it 28-20. They go for the 2-point, and they do not get it. They try an onside kick and do not recover as well. So the final score is 28-20 Hilltop Lancers. It was definitely not as close of a game as the scoreboard might indicate. Malihan threw for, I think, 3 interceptions. There was a lot of shooting themselves in the foot despite Kasim Williams' epic efforts into keeping them in this game. All right. ESPN, where are you? I want the call up. I'm just kidding, by the way. So, now, let's get into actual Duck football now. UO versus Wisconsin. Now, I titled this episode grateful to be alive, because I felt like if I added dead in the title, the algorithm would bury me. And it's likely that it would, because apparently the internet, in an attempt to not be under the iron fist of the FCC, censors worse than the FCC. So, unfortunately, we have to abide by certain rules, and we can't use words in the English language, even in a descriptive way, at risk of, I don't know, pissing someone off in some way. But it was Grateful Dead night, homecoming night, and everyone, of course, was expecting quite the blowout by Oregon, especially after their 750-yard offensive performance against Rutgers last week. For some reason, Oregon is playing better on the road than at home, which is odd for Oregon as a program, but especially a team as young as they are currently. I don't know why I'm talking in the way that I'm talking right now. I don't know. That's just the cadence that I have right now, because I'm trying to sort of organize my thoughts. I have a rundown. I have an outline of things I want to do and talk about. But sometimes when the camera begins, you sort of forget what you were planning on saying, especially when everything's live and in living color. You're having to also look at all the technology issues that might come across while you're doing it. That's why producers are important, I guess. Anyhow, that game was not a blowout. The weather was basically a blowout, but not the game. And there's multiple takeaways to go from this. Now, the broadcast on television didn't really, whether by Tim Brando and the other commentator that was with him, or the actual television broadcast itself, did not quite do the weather justice that was going on in Autzen Stadium, even though it never rains in Autzen Stadium. We did not see just how hard it was raining on the television. And the sideline cams that they usually use in the broadcast, I noticed that they were using them less and less over the course of the game, because also at the beginning of the game, it sort of looked like a fisheye lens because of all the water droplets and all the water that was on the lens. Now, usually you could get away with that by wiping the lens off periodically and just acknowledging there's going to be some raindrops on your lens over the course of the broadcast. But when you're not using the sideline cams or the other cams that are getting rained on, you can wipe them off or something to sort of make it still visible on television during those breaks from your shot being live. However, the rain and the wind was so strong, it seemed like a moot point to where they sort of stopped using those cameras. Apparently, the wind gust got up to 45 miles an hour. And that, I think, put a bit of a wet blanket, pardon the pun. I haven't had squirt in forever. Giggity. That is tasty. But anyway, the weather was a factor for sure, and there's a lot to be said about that. It's definitely a factor that you apply in terms of certain statistics, maybe the final score, so on and so forth. Because at the beginning of the game, too, there was sun. The sun cracked through the clouds, so it looked like the weather was fine. But apparently, the wind was still around, even though the rain was not quite there yet. I am dieting, and I had a cheat day today, and I hate dieting. And not because it's eating healthy and I don't like vegetables, but whenever you have food that you sort of cut out of your diet, you start feeling the actual effects of what it actually does to your body versus when you don't eat it. And I just feel disgusting right now. I had pizza. Pizza is my, right now, go-to cheat meal because it's a little bit cheaper. But also it's just a nice gut bomb. But it doesn't feel good to eat that food anymore. And I've just gotten so used to not eating it that when I do, it's not really that enjoyable. It's only enjoyable in the moment. But nonetheless, we're just going to give an example, though, from Jeff Schwartz here. Don't mind my ugly face. From Jeff Schwartz here on his Twitter, that when he was going over the film, all right, apparently that screen share didn't work. Here we go, X. That was sort of a nice visualization of just what was going on with the wind and rain here. You know, I'm going to make this full screen. I probably should have done this ahead of time, but who cares? We are not a high value or a high production show here. And then I'm going to take me. I'm going to move it up. Then I'm going to, I can't find the little toggle lines here. Can you help me zoom out? Okay, that's fine. There we go. That's better. A little smaller. Boom. Okay. So, what we have here is the Dante Moore throw that was at the red zone. I think this was intended for Decorian Moore. And it is a bootleg run here, kind of going out of the pocket here. I don't think it was a play action. So it was actually, no, it was just a rollout. And now you see here you got a crossing pattern going to Decorian Moore. And here's what Jeff Schwartz said here. Unless Dante Moore throws a slider now, I'd say it was windy in Eugene last night. And that's exactly how the ball went. Let's see if I can make this full screen. Here we go. How's it look on? Oh, okay. Click to exit full screen. Okay, I guess that's not a thing. Okay. Those are some kinks we'll have to work out. But you can see basically once it passes the second level here, like right about here, it literally just takes a sharp curve back across the line here. So as you see, this is the window. I wish I could just go full screen on Meld here. But as you can see here, this is the window that Dante is trying to throw into. And the ball ends up more over here. Right here. Like right about here. If I can see correctly. Yeah, right here. He was trying to throw right here. But the ball went back right here. Can I play it on slow-mo? Here we go. Playback speed. Let's go half speed. So you see here this rollout coming across. And right there, Dante, that's the window right here. Boo, right there. That's the trajectory. Then boom, it sharply goes this way. Without the wind, that throw's not happening like that. Look how sharp that turn is. So that was what the Ducks and Wisconsin Badgers, even during the sunny periods of the day, were dealing with when it comes to the weather and the gameplay. But also, here's the thing. The offensive line at the same time at that era of the game, the first half, was not getting the push that they needed. Because with weather games like that, you will need to rely on the run. And the run was okay enough. But whenever there was a pass that was going to the second level and stuff, the O-line wasn't blocking. Dante Moore takes a sack. Dante Moore then holds onto the ball too long in upcoming plays, and he takes sacks there. So the offensive line wasn't always to blame for those sacks. Dante held onto the ball too long at certain points. Dante clearly is a mind guy. If something's off rhythm, off confidence-wise, that's where you can get him. And obviously the weather and the pressure at the beginning that Wisconsin was getting on him was throwing off his rhythm. And he was holding on to the ball too long and taking sacks. But I don't know if the weather that was sort of forcing him to hesitate on certain throws downfield, especially if that's how crazy the wind was, to be like, I can't make that throw today, then you're not in for a good time, especially because of those sacks. You had negative 13 yards rushing, I think, in the first quarter. I don't know about the first half because we ended up scoring on a rushing touchdown. Maybe it was that screen pass at the first, but anyway, so the offensive line, though, was not getting a great push regardless the entire first half. And it was affecting certain aspects of the run game, and it was affecting certain aspects of the passing game. That was not good. Luckily, the defense was playing very well. The defense gave them enough time, gave the offense enough time to find it. And that is why I say I would trade a little bit of my offense for an elite defense like that, because that's what you get when you have a defense that can hold off enough time for your offense to find a rhythm if your offense is having an off day. Now, when you compile an elite defense with an offense that's in stride from the get-go, then you're unstoppable. But having that kind of defense on Saturday was a big help, especially because the youngest group on that offense is the offense. You know what I mean? You got freshman receivers, a bunch of freshman running backs, a first year or 1.5 year first time starter and a quarterback. And I'll get to that a little later because it's going to go on sort of in further segments. The game was ugly. And sometimes you're going to have those. I mean, and I know I've sort of, said this before, with Penn State, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But this game was a little bit different in that it's the style of football game because of the conditions. You're going to be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but in this case, a splash of water to get through this game. By the end of the game lasted almost 4 hours because that was just the type of game that it was going to be. It was going to be a slog fest. Everyone's going to run a little slower because you're sloshing through the water. Balls are going to get dropped. Throws are going to be bad because the balls are slippery, giggity. So on and so forth on both sides of the ball. But here's also the thing. I'm going to do a little bit of a side tangent, but it's because it was relevant and applies to the game. Oregon had a lot of penalties. Very, very, very sloppy O-line play in the penalties and just overall sloppy play in that regard from the rest of the team. I am getting sick and tired of illegal man downfield penalties. I cannot bludgeon that point and break the record enough about how sick I am of seeing those penalties. For God's sakes, if you're going to let football, college and the pros, be a bubble screen fest, give linemen more space to move up the field as a rule. Give them 5 yards instead of 1 or 2. Because there's no way. Those plays are unrunnable if the lineman takes one step. If you're pushing your defensive lineman, your blocking assignment 1 or 2 yards on his ass, you're an illegal man downfield suddenly on the bubble screen. I'm so tired of this penalty. And 1, I'm tired of it being called by the refs. And 2, I'm tired of the play being called from every team. But we'll also get to that a little bit later. The game was almost 4 hours. 4 hours because not only the conditions and the style of play that it was going to be, and then all the penalties, which of course is due to sloppy play by Oregon in particular. You could argue sloppy play by Wisconsin on their penalties, so on and so forth. But because of all those illegal man downfield penalties, just these ticky-tack bullcrap penalties, I am so tired of refs running games. It's the reason why I barely play organized basketball anymore. I used to play basketball for my high school, and when I quit playing football, I was playing basketball in the fall, the winter after basketball season was over, spring and summer. All off. I was playing basketball 365 days a year. And then I've stopped watching the NBA for, I don't know, at least 15 years, maybe almost 20 now at this point, because I've been tired of the refs running the games. Let the players win or lose these games. Obviously outside of obvious calls, but this ticky-tack BS. This was even before sports betting became a thing. These ticky-tack bullcrap penalties, fouls, whatever. I am so tired of it. Because 1, every time there's any slowing down in the game, and this is why I've stopped watching the NFL for almost 10 years. Now I've been watching it a little bit more, mostly because I want to see the Duck Pros play and see how well they're doing. But it's why I've largely stopped watching the NFL, because by the time Tom Brady made a 3-step drop, there was 2 commercial breaks already. So 1, sports betting and deciding outcomes of games aside, that's a different conversation for a different day. But the constant need to slow the game down and slow the broadcast down, kill all momentum. Once the game gets rolling, you stop. You make some sort of stop and go to commercial. I can't count how many times it's like there's a touchdown, commercial after the PAT, commercial after the PAT, pre-kickoff, then kickoff, commercial right after kickoff before the possession change. You have all these sideline cams. You have a sky cam. You have a blimp. You have a drone. You have cameras everywhere. You can't do a couple cutaways of the crowd, a couple cutaways of the coach the team, the cheerleaders, the tailgaters outside. You got cameras out there. Some sense of atmosphere of the game. You can't achieve that? No, we got to throw some sort of flag. Slow the game down. The defensive lineman caused the offensive lineman to jump. Therefore, it's an offsides. Then you got to go to the review booth. Go to commercial. Come back. Don't even see how they made the call. Not only because the game Oregon versus Wisconsin was played poorly by Oregon in particular, I wanted, by the end of the game, I wanted to just say, get this game over with. What are we doing playing this game any further? Just take a knee, take a knee, take a knee. Just run the clock out. Get this thing over with, please. Not only because it was like Oregon was holding on to a bitter lead to the bitter end. Run the clock out that way, but it's like this game is going on forever. Almost 4 hours of people in the stands getting soaked through. Phones ruined. People's tailgating tents were blowing across the parking lot. And everyone was shitting on the student section for leaving. Not to mention, too, they got to cross the Willamette. I can't remember. It's the Mackenzie River, right? I can't even remember. But you have to cross the river on the footbridge. With that much rain and wind, that river's getting higher. You don't want to get trapped. That's neither here nor there. But by the end of the game, I was just like, get this thing over with now, please. Good Lord. So, a win is a win, though. Aside from all that, we can still say a win is a win, survive, stay alive, and move forward. Because this is the era or the period of the football season where style points, sure, they matter, but especially in the playoff era, if you're in the hunt for the playoffs, just survive and move on. And Wisconsin was sort of possibly turning out to be the Big Ten Stanford for us, where they always sort of cause problems. And like last year, we had to beat them on a last-second field goal and then a last-second interception by Mateo. Wisconsin, I think, is just one of those teams for Oregon, and they're trying to have the blueprint of hold on to the ball and hope your defense can get stops. And Oregon's offense was helping that game plan out by their terrible play. Okay, maybe not terrible, but not stellar play. They finally found their groove a little bit. And then Dante Moore goes down. More on that later. But the key takeaways here is for a young team sort of being able to grit out these type of wins, that's a good sign. It's not the great sign, not always a great sign to be in that position. But, again, a win is a win. That's sort of all that can be said on that front. I'd like to see Mateo show up somewhere. He's kind of been quiet the past few games. I'm hoping he can find his groove again. I say again, but look, he's often double teamed because they know what kind of threat he is, and that's why I said at the beginning of the season, I think Tatum is going to have a breakout season for Tatum. And Bear is starting to play, not starting, he's been, but you know what I mean. It's the snowball is gaining its momentum with Bear finding his groove on this team, I think, as well. But my initial analysis of Tatum finding his stride this year was not only because he's getting more snaps, more significant snaps, I guess, significant number, and then the snaps themselves significant. I'm not trying to downplay what he was doing for us before, but you know what I'm saying. And the reason for that, the third reason would be because teams are going to be game planning around Mateo. Double teams, certain screens to get him out into space and enough out of position where he can't make a play. Other guys like Tatum are going to have to step up. And that is what I think we're seeing. But Mateo needs to start being a consistent game wrecker like he has been. And he has played better against the run. And like I said as well before, I would rather the team be very stout against the run and give up a little bit more ground on the passing game. But with teams like Indiana and yesterday or Saturday, we were not getting pressure on the QB that we needed to be getting, for sure. And with Wisconsin's quarterback in particular, I believe he's a third-string freshman. You should be harassing this guy all game. Especially because Oregon did play pretty well against the run. There were some times where we were giving up some 5-yard carries, the Stanford crap, right? But overall, well enough against the run where you can start pinning your ears back a little bit on the pass rush, especially over the course of the game, because Wisconsin was needing to pass more. But I have been slightly critical to neutral of Will Stein. And I haven't been so quick to judge in the sense of get this guy off my campus sort of thing like a lot of fans do. And he's obviously not a bad offensive coordinator. But there are certain strategies of his that just seem crazy. Seems crazy. Now, weather aside, so let's take into account the weather on this game. Let me brighten up the picture here, maybe. Just a little. Nope, wrong one. There we go. Better? There we go. Let's take into account the weather for this game. There are certain things on offense you probably can't do. I don't like that enough. Sorry. Let's go back here. Who cares? Okay. There are certain things when a game like this, monsoon, pouring rain, 40-mile-an-hour winds, Dante Moore's throwing sliders because of the wind. Here's the thing. You're not going to be able to throw the ball deep. It's just not going to happen. Dante could be throwing a post route down the middle of the field, and it's in the stands. That's how fast it could blow out of proportion. Pardon the pun. That's just not going to happen. This is why this game is going to be 3 yards and a splash of water. It's going to be, you got to win this game on the ground so you can take care of the ball. And even then, with how wet it was, you got to take care of the ball when you're running the ball too. I've played in games like this when I was younger. And in those games too, we were playing on grass. We didn't play on turf very much. So it's a mud stomping game. It's one of those games. So as a coach, you have to game plan around that. So yes, you're going to see more bubble screens because those short passes are the passes that you can make over a deep shot. And the problem, though, was even in the Wisconsin game, our offense wasn't doing anything until that Jeremiah McClellan crossing route in the intermediate. We were throwing downfield. That got the offense going. and eventually open things up where we could start scoring again, or scoring at all. And the problem here is, and there was another play too where it was like 3rd and 25 because of just annoying ass penalties. Again, penalties. It was like 3rd and 25. It was a certain point in the game. It was pouring down rain. There was no way you were going to try to take a deep shot when you're up by 1 possessions, maybe a low or 2 possessions. You're not going to take a risk down the field. Your punter was punting super well. He had two punts that were inside the 5 and 1 at the 1-yard line. He totally flipped the field position. With a game like that, that's the winning play that'll get you wins. And what a get for Oregon with Ferguson Reynolds. Oh my gosh, he's just been an amazing punter for us. Something we haven't seen in years. Love it. But those are the punters are the guys that will win you games in games like that. And he did. It was him. Well, I mean, you know what I mean. I say it's him like it was all him, but you know what I mean. So on this play, it was like 3rd and 25. Throw the bubble screen. See if a miracle can happen. But just accept you're punting the ball and live to see another day, especially when your defense was playing pretty solid. I understand that play call. It's a good play call. It's a smart play call for that moment. But the inverse of that is those are the type of play calls Stein makes when it's 75 and not a cloud in the sky at Autzen Stadium. I don't understand. I would easily be the worst player in minor league baseball, and my batting average would be a higher percentage than the bubble screens that work in Will Stein's offense. Not saying that it never breaks out for a big gain, but it's way more often than not. And you have Jordan Davison, who had a game again, Noah Whittington, and De'Aaron Hill as your running backs. If you want to relieve pressure from Dante, get under center and give those guys the ball. Even if your O-line isn't blocking very well, try it, because very rare with any of those running backs are there negative plays. You might get to the line of scrimmage, 1 yard gain, but you're not going backwards with those guys. I have seen way too many times those bubble screens get blown up. And then you're trying to call that crap on 3rd and longs. And you got a guy like Dante Moore who can throw the ball. And he can throw the ball downfield. And you're doing this RPO bubble screen crap with Dante Moore. Like I said, I will risk a pick or two or an errant throw, a lower completion percentage by just letting Dante Moore do what he does. He doesn't need an RPO system. And I understand sometimes the bubble screen is for relieving the pressure that you're getting from your O-line play, and it's a pseudo run play where you can try to get the ball out into space in your playmaker's hands and let them see what they can do, and you've taken the D-line essentially out of the play. I understand that, but here's the thing. College defense, high school defenses, you saw the highlights that I just showed you. That bubble screen that was a 69-yard touchdown was lucky. There was a linebacker there that blew it up. He just over-pursued, and the guy caught the ball and had grass after him after that. That doesn't happen every time. That happens 1 out of 10 times. High school, college, and pro secondaries and coverage guys know when that play is coming, and they know exactly how to blow it up, and they do. especially now because it's been run into the ground, that play. At the beginning, it was a little different. And then when you know that Indiana did this, they're like, oh, okay, well, if they're going to run the ball or throw bubble screens, we're just going to play up. Who cares? They're not going deep. They're outright refusing to go deep. So let's just play up. And the second the ball is snapped, my corners are going to jam their receivers. And our linebackers are going to play their assignments. And our safeties are going to play up. And they don't have to think about potential issues. I mean, Oregon's only offensive touchdown against Indiana was a 40-yard pass to Malik Benson. I think, if I remember correctly, it was a post route. Vertical. It was a vertical shot downfield that was wide open. And worked because they felt like it wasn't necessary to make that sort of coverage call. And Will Stein always does that against the good teams. Against teams that are equal, like Indiana, or better. But even teams that, have high-performing defenses, like we'll say Wisconsin. Just teams that are better than a tune-up game team. But he gets way conservative again the better the team is in terms of his play calling. That is the opposite of what you should do. Again, I understand, especially in those big moment games, you don't want to give that other team any sort of momentum getter like a turnover. I understand that. But on the flip side, you're giving away just as much momentum when you have a bubble screen that gets blown up every play. Or you run it on 3rd and long and you give the opposing defense a break. Because all they have to do is make sure that they keep them in front of the sticks and just make the tackle. It's not a hard play to defend in long 3rd down situations. The reason why the bubble screens are the most successful bubble screens that have happened for Oregon this year, it was always in the red zone, around the 10-yard line, 15 yards, so on and so forth. Because the field is more compacted. And you've opened up the compact field by doing the screen. But when it's a wide open field and the team doesn't feel like they need to cover deep or anything, and it's a 3rd and long or a second, whatever in long, you're behind on the chains and you're running a bubble screen. They're already playing for the intermediate first down getter routes. So everything's already in front of them, and you're running a play where everyone on the offense is in front of them now. And all they have to do is break down, get your angles, your assignments, don't have a bad pursuit angle, wrap up. That's all they need to do. They don't need to make a play, if that makes sense. So I am getting frustrated with Will Stein and that game plan. I don't know with the shots of Dan Lanning during that game if he was just frustrated with his players' execution, because again, there's play calls and then there's execution. The play caller should be putting the player in the best possible scenario to execute. But if the player doesn't execute, then it's still not really a bad play call. So there's two sides to that. If it's a bad play call and the team executes that bad play call, then again it's the play caller's fault. And vice versa, player's fault. or coach's fault, or players. Yeah, I got that mixed up. Dang it. I thought I had it. I'm tired. I had a long day today. I've had a long week in reality. But vice versa. So, I don't know if Dan Lanning in those shots, he looked pissed. He looked annoyed. He looked irritated, frustrated. I don't know if it was because I was putting my own frustrations onto him and his face and he was just being intense or whatever. But let's say, given that he was frustrated, I am trying to figure out if his frustrations were at Will Stein or the players' execution. And it could be both. Who knows? But all I know is that I'm frustrated with Will Stein. And when people are saying open the playbook, we're not talking about reverses and flea flickers. We're talking about taking the leashes off the guys and let them do what they do best. As a receiver in middle school and high school, I wasn't really a possession guy. I was a deep threat guy. Even when I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. I was probably more of a deeper threat guy. So I didn't get the ball much, but when I did, they were the more explosive plays. If they tried to shoehorn me into being a possession guy, I could make it work, but that's not the best position that I could be in to succeed. I've done it. I've done the short route thing, that kind of thing. Sure. I'm just using that as an example. It's not like I didn't succeed. I'm just saying, I've really only had one or two good quarterbacks over the course of my career. Everyone threw rainbows that were hard to catch in that way. But I was a zone buster type of guy. That's really what I was. I wasn't a guy that was so quick I'll beat you on a drag route or a slant, but I'll beat you. So the illustration that I'm making, though, is that the play caller's responsibility is to put the type of personnel, and I don't know, maybe when I said embarrassment of riches earlier this season, this was happening. There's too much options. There's too many choices, too many playmakers, weapons, that maybe, I don't know, you're still trying to figure out who does what, but we're getting to the point where it needs to be figured out who needs to go where personnel-wise. But open up the playbook in that you're, coming up on your promise of getting Kenyon Sadiq 60 touches this year. He hasn't really gotten many the past few games. And I don't know if it's necessarily because he's being outplayed. With Indiana, some of it had to do with Dante missing reads. But it's been a tough go the past month or so in terms of getting Kenyon the touches. And I don't necessarily know if it's because Kenyon's not playing well. Just seems like an odd thing to be true, but who knows? I'm not an all 22 film guy. It's kind of crazy, all these film guys that suddenly showed up on the internet. I'm not trying to talk too much trash, but it's like, and not all of them have bad analysis necessarily or anything, but it's just funny to me where you got former players and coaches doing the film stuff. I think that quite covers it. I don't know. I will say growing up on my football teams, we didn't do much film room stuff, and maybe that's why I didn't have the makings of a varsity athlete. Who knows? And I probably would have benefited from it. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is there wasn't really the opportunity at those schools to have a film room, we'll say. The coaches didn't coach in the film room. And maybe that's a coaching problem. Who knows? But the 1 year that our coach, he had a job outside of school. So the coaching was volunteer in a way. He did film, and we studied film. And that year, our team was pretty darn good, and that was probably my best statistical year. So that's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But during the years where we didn't really do film, I just had to play by instinct and my on-the-field assignments that were given to me by the coach. So, but I'm not trying to be a film guy. That's all I'm saying. So it's just kind of funny to me that I'm saying I put my trust in the players and coaches that have done film before, and they're doing it now. I'm just going by the eye test and basing it on my own sort of experience on the team via my instinctual play and eye test play and so on and so forth. Like I said, I played free safety and left corner. So I knew all my zone coverage assignments. I didn't know the team's assignments necessarily. Basically the secondary, but I knew what I had to do, and then I would make my read whether it was run or pass based on those assignments. And as a wide receiver, it was the same thing. I had my route on my route tree. Although usually most secondary guys weren't really that great. So you can just do a zone buster and beat them. But that's not here nor there. I went on quite the tangent there. Oh, yeah, film guys. I'm not claiming to be a film guy. Like I said, my analysis is on the eye test and based on my experience playing the game. But I'm hoping that that those types of things will be dealt with depending on which item that Dan Lanning appeared frustrated with. I'm not really going to, again, apply emotion to him, but I understand why he's getting a little testy. And he was testy enough with one of my favorite comments I've seen was elite questioning by James Crapea. And here's my view on James Crapea. Just like I think there is a place in the space for guys like Aaron Fentress, there are places in the space for guys like James Crapea. And what he does is sort of be the sacrificial lamb of the sports media, because most reporters will say, "Hey, coach, how did you feel about Grateful Dead Day?" "Oh, yeah, it was wonderful. Great time, great experience." He'll ask the dumb questions so they get asked and answered. Even if it's an answer that is shutting him down and, verbally bitch slapping him, he's asking those questions to get those answers. I understand the people who don't like him. I think it's funny to clown on him, but as a guy that is a participant in the media that way and a beat reporter, he's trying to dig. And even if it's an answer you don't like, at least he got the answer. That sort of seems to be his method. And I just want to, further this discussion of the Oregon-Wisconsin game, but then move into the next segment with this particular soundbite. Here's Scarpea asking Dan Lanning about Brock Thomas in my cool radio voice.
Fans are still very much fretting about the backup quarterback situation, Dan. Just what aren't Austin or Luke doing, or what do they need?
Like, our backup quarterback went 4 for 4 tonight. We won the game.
You don't have to tell me. I'm just...
Well, then tell them. I mean, they should go to our locker room and see them carry Brock Thomas up in the locker room after the game. Like, our players see it every day in practice. When has Brock come in and not performed well for us this season? He's done what we've asked him to do every time he's come in. So people should stop worrying about it. And they should also know that those other quarterbacks are doing a really good job in practice too. But Brock's playing well, guys. Right? Watch the film.
Watch the film. That's funny. Anyway. So this is the kind of things that you get with the James Scarpea question. And the discussion that was being had, obviously, I don't know if you heard, I should have put more pad on the front of that soundbite so you heard James's question. So I don't know if you heard the beginning of that bite, but James was asking about the fans' concerns about backup quarterbacks and star chasing and Brock Thomas. Now, Brock Thomas came in the second half as the backup quarterback. He is a walk-on. I believe a little bit undersized. Let me double check because I think he's like 5'10 or 5'11. Brock Thomas, Oregon, height. 5'11. So he's a little bit on the smaller side. A little bit bigger than Dylan Gabriel. Smaller side. Walk-on. Legacy from Sheldon High School. Legacy, I believe his father and grandfather played at Oregon as well. But like I said before the season started, you had Luke Moga run fast fans and Dante Moore doubters that wanted Novosad to start because they're afraid of the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing. Again, I'm approaching this with someone who has been in the locker room at one point before in my lifetime. I've been in locker rooms. I've been a part of discussions about depth charts and which team you made, JV, varsity, all that good stuff, right? So that's the angle that I'm coming with this next segment here. Now, at the beginning of the season, you had people who were obviously unsure, and somewhat justifiably so, unsure of Dante Moore, considering his performance at UCLA, and he hadn't played since he got benched at UCLA, so there was a lot of unanswered questions. And last year, they saw Luke Moga run fast, and then you had Austin Novosad still waiting in the wings as well. And they were sort of more known commodities than Dante Moore. Because if I remember correctly, Dante Moore didn't play much in the spring game. Last season, it was mostly Dylan Gabriel. So you have unanswered questions and with comparatively so answered guys behind Dante Moore on the depth chart. And then people forgot that Dan Lanning doesn't acknowledge or have any sort of transparency in that way or reveal anything to the media. And this season in particular, Dan Lanning had closed practices to media members. So everyone on the outside was running blind from everyone on the inside. And so, and all Dan Lanning told the media members was, oh yeah, they're competing. And then everyone, oh, it's quarterback competition. They're unsure about Dante Moore. Austin Novosad might be the guy. But Luke Moga run fast. They just took his words and ran with it. And if anyone remembers anything about Lanning, is of course he's going to say there's a competition. You want all your guys on every level of the depth chart competing. It's going to be a little bit of a semantic overload, sure, but yeah, of course. You want them competing for the starting job. Would you want a guy playing in the game that doesn't want the starting job? No, I'm good on second and third string. I'm good. I'll just do the drills, and I'm not going to compete for a start. Then he'll never be the starter for the team. That's an insane mindset to have. But sometimes you don't understand that mindset unless you've actually played in any organized sport before. I'm not talking about you had to be pro, because this is concepts and principles that happen when you play Pee Wee football too. Of course. And of course you're going to say, yeah, they're playing well and competing. What are you going to say? Oh yeah, my second stringer's dog shit? No. But everyone took and ran with the narrative that, oh, the QB room is undecided. Austin Novosad is that good. Dante Moore is not that great. Luke Moga run fast. The bottom line is we don't know what goes on in the locker room. Especially when you've been kept out of the locker room this season. So if Dan Lanning says that Brock Thomas is the second stringer, trust that he's the second stringer. Maybe he did earn it. None of us know. Only they know. And clearly, as the evidence of Lanning putting him number 2 on the depth chart and saying he's earned it, he's earned it. But people are so blind also by the star chasing. Austin Novosad was a 4-star. Luke Moga was a run-fast 3-star. Hidden gem guy. But Brock Thomas was a walk-on. That sometimes some people have a different approach and certain things about it. Maybe Brock Thomas could have played anywhere else, but he wanted to walk on at Oregon because his family was there. And he lives and grew up in Austin's backyard. And then he earned his way. And he was just a guy that they didn't offer a scholarship to. And it was a mistake by Oregon. Who knows? We don't know. All we know is by what Lanning tells us. And there's lots of things Lanning doesn't want us to know. And that's fine. That is okay. Everyone's so nosy, you know? Who knows? And that's okay. And when Brock Thomas came in for Dante Moore in the second half on Saturday, like Lanning said, he went 4 for 4. There was one where it probably should have been a pick. But again, with the conditions, it was funny. The linebacker or the safety or whoever on Wisconsin was like wiping off his hands like, yo, it's raining so hard. I couldn't grab on the ball. And it shot right through his gloves and fell into Decoria Moore's hands on a big first down. Brock Thomas did his job in coming in as backup and didn't Jeff Lockey it. Sorry, Jeff, but come on. That's unfortunately a reputation amongst Oregon fans, but he didn't give up the game. He kept the offense going enough to win the game, and they ended up winning when he played essentially the entire second half when Dante Moore went out. So, I mean, even though it's against Wisconsin, I mean, he wasn't going in, subbing in for Dante in the national championship game or anything. But he did his job. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. And sometimes that moves you up the depth chart. Sometimes a coach or a manager, an employer, They're just looking for a guy that does their job, you know? Doesn't cause too many problems. Doesn't make too many mistakes. He's not the flashy guy that's the superstar, but he does his job, and he does it efficiently and well. Because if Brock Thomas was really that bad, he very well could have lost Oregon the game. We've had plenty of backups, Jeff Locke, sorry again, before that have lost us games against teams we should have beat still. But he didn't. He even got us an extra score, 21-7 instead of 14-7. He did his job. What are we complaining about? Honestly, like, isn't that what we want from a backup? And still, you could say, thank God that Dante Moore is not out for too long. He just got a really bad bloody nose. I've had some of those before, too, when I've gotten elbowed in the face. So I think it's not a season ender or anything. He'll be fine. Moving on. Heal up fast, heal up good, heal up well, and move forward. So that's good news as well. It wasn't a season or career-ending injury for Moore. But again, it's nice to have a solid enough backup that can keep the game won. That's what backups are for. And here's the thing too, and of course there's the speculation surrounding Novosad and Moga, especially in this new era, that they're probably going to hit the transfer portal. Maybe Brock ended up being that good where he got those guys to transfer and he's a solid backup. And I mean, before the season started, even before we even got to Brock Thomas, there was Dante Moore, Novosad, Moga, Akili Smith Jr., 4 deep at quarterback. And of course, I think Akili has been redshirted, but who knows? Maybe Moga, Novosad redshirted. Maybe they're transferring. More power to you. What are we going to do to stop it? Are we going to start a Twitter petition to keep them at Oregon? We're not going to be able to stop it if they do. But if you got outplayed, then you got outplayed. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it all. So I think this concern is only one-sided and it's manufactured. Because look, what if Brock Thomas plays bad? They put Novosad in, he plays well. Okay, then you had a backup of a backup play better than a backup and he's playing well. Everybody wins. It's crazy. It's crazy. And look, not every recruit and not every transfer is going to be a winner, a solid direct hit every time. We had Ty Thompson, who was a 5-star out of Gilbert, Arizona. He was supposed to be the next great thing, and he didn't pan out. He's now playing tight end at Tulane, I think, right now. He didn't pan out at Tulane either. Mekhi Hughes, he was the top running back transfer, and I think the top overall transfer in the transfer portal, and it seems like he's gotten outplayed by 3 freshmen. And I think Noah is, no disrespect, but I think he's getting more carries this season because the coaches are trying to make sure he gets into the NFL, because I think he'll do well in the NFL. And it's not like he's been playing bad at Oregon, but you're seeing Davison and De'Aaron Hill and those guys getting more carries than even they were at the beginning of the season. I won't even say Whittington was being outplayed. I'm just saying they're playing at least up to Whittington's level, not in some cases better. So sometimes it just doesn't work out for some guys in some places. Some guys they'll leave, they'll transfer out, transfer to another place, and then they're balling out. And sometimes it's because that was just the player or coach that worked best with them. And I think last year there was rumors of Novosad transferring anyway to Baylor or something last year. So it's not shocking necessarily, but that's, Brock is doing what he's doing, and he's getting rewarded for it, and it clearly deserves some sort of reward because he's getting rewarded. That's all you can ask. I don't know why he's catching any heat for any of this. He's just doing his thing, minding his business. And clearly, he's got players that on his side just as much as the coaches, if they're actually carrying him off the team or off the field. They seem to like him. He's playing well. He comes from QBU High School in Sheldon, Justin Herbert and such. He's playing well enough at Oregon. He's the backup, and everyone, rallied around him when he came in the game. They won, and they celebrated with him. He's a member of the team. More power to him. It's like, Brock's the man. What can you say? I don't know. Obviously, he's not going to start over Dante, but, that's just what it is. But I guess that's all I got to say about the Brock Thomas scandal, if you will. I can't believe. Sometimes I can't believe we have these conversations as a fan base and as a fan base alongside the team. Because again, it's just like he didn't have enough stars, so I don't trust the coaches on that decision. Look, I understand coaches make bad decisions. As we've seen with all the ones that have gotten fired so far. And as I've discussed earlier with my issues with Will Stein, but to a certain degree, you still, you got to make sure those decisions are actually worth losing trust in somebody. But I think that was on all the bullet points that I had to say about the Brock Thomas situation. But now that we're moving forward into November, we're going to maybe look back at September and October and then look towards the rest of November and December and sort of get the overall assessment of this team right after I take a quick pee break. we are back. I will someday come up with a different interlude than the countdown. But for now, you're just going to have to deal with that and wonder when I'm actually going to come back. I try not to let it go all the way down the 5 minutes during a commercial break. By the way, 6-pack skateboards. Get yourself a 6-pack and get yourself another one. And support your local skate shop and your homies. Okay. So, with everything that's been going on, too, with the sort of roller coaster of a season that this has sort of been, we have high highs with Penn State. And that high becoming lower and lower every time Penn State loses. And then the low lows with the bad play against Indiana and then losing to Indiana and then bouncing back against Rutgers. And then taking another step back against Wisconsin. Despite the weather conditions, it was still a step back. I think there is a question that we should maybe be discussing is who is this team and what is this team? And by who, obviously, it's the identity of this team and what in the sense of what are they capable of and what are they not capable of, so on and so forth. Because we discuss ceilings and floors and all that good stuff before the season. And we base this on paper analysis and what they did last year. Because no matter how new the roster is, you're still sort of basing, the team's future performance the upcoming season versus, or, with the factoring in of their performance from the last season. It's just what humans naturally do on many things. I know that they say that, I think when trading stocks, you say past performance does not indicate future performance, but that's just what humans do all the time. That's why it's hard for people to move on from their past. Because the only way they can gauge their future is often through their past, because it's hard to see the present. But that's why it's just as important to understand your past and use it as a way to view the present and see how you have changed from the past to the present, so you can look at how you will evolve and change in the future. It's just my spiritual wisdom from Father Sean today. Just kidding. Don't mean to commit a heresy or whatever. But that's what you do. But now we are in the present. We are in the present season. And there's data points that we have been able to pick up over the course of the season. And a look ahead into the future. Now, who is this team? They are made up of a bunch of freshmen. Blue chip freshmen, mind you, but freshmen nonetheless. And I wish I had this video from a year, maybe even 2 years ago, of this USC defensive back. And he was a 5-star defensive back. And he was telling the interviewers about his first day at practice. And how different that D1 practice is from high school. Where you get this at all levels, right? You have high school. You are the cream of the crop of high school, and that talent gap is a chasm. It can be wide. And you could be so good. You know that video of Arch Manning circulating around where he's playing at a 2A school, and everyone's sort of discussing about his 5-star sort of being a fraudulent 5-star. I'm not going to inject myself into that conversation, but that's the conversation that's being had. And the video shows just pretty unathletic defensive linemen chasing after him. And Arch is essentially jogging around the field because he's able to outrun these guys. And, throwing touchdown passes, so on and so forth. Well, for some guys who are 5 stars playing in places like San Diego County, LA County, Southern California, or California as a whole, Texas, Florida, these crazy hubs of crazy talent, that 5-star could be playing against other 5 stars and have that much of a talent gap, how much better they are than them. But then you go to D1, and suddenly every D1 athlete is just as talented as you, and maybe even more talented. They came from their little pool, high school pool of being so much more talented than everybody. And then the field gets a little more even. And then you got to be the cream that rises to the top in D1. And then you have the best of the best of the best of D1 going to the NFL. And then you go to the NFL and you have to make a name for yourself in the NFL if you even can. But he was telling the story about one of his first couple reps in his college career. And he just got torched. And he used the term chasing cheeks. Because he was just running as fast as he could after this receiver just burned him. And that was obviously his wake-up call of the difference between high school and D1. So, even with guys as good as DeCorian Moore, they're still going to, or I'll say Corey Moore, because I do hear, I say DeCorian just because it kind of rolls off the tongue, and that's kind of what he used. But it seems like he prefers to be called Corey. I'm trying. I'll try. But Corey Moore, even him, will have some sort of welcome to college football moments. And it just doesn't matter sometimes the level of talent. And when your whole team is basically that, a young team, you're going to just have that. That's just what it is going to be. So I think most rational Duck fans, we're not thinking national championship or bust this year. A lot of them were thinking, we'll be good. And I think we'll get 10 wins, and we'll likely get to the playoffs. And maybe we'll get lucky and have a bit of a playoff run. We won't be the top seed or anything. We might be a lower seed and get a little hot and win a playoff game, so on and so forth. But we're probably not going to be national championship or bust this year because of the youth. And with Dante Moore, this is the most games in a row that he has started in his college career. Oh, I got the hiccups. I'm trying to quit smoking, and my body's still getting used to these Zins. Oh. They go down a little rough sometimes. Okay. So you have Dante Moore. By the way, if you're ever come across this live streaming or watching, go ahead and throw your opinions in the chat and contribute to the conversation. That would be fun. And if you're watching this after having gone live, leave a comment below. So you can still contribute to the conversation. But Dante Moore, he only started 5 games at UCLA. He was benched after game 5 or during game 5. Dang it. What is going on? Whew. Oh, goodness. I'm just going to hiccup the rest of this show, I guess. Okay, Dante Moore. Didn't get past game 5, we'll say. Starting at UCLA. He got benched for his play. Then he transfers out of UCLA, goes to Oregon, sits for a year behind Dylan Gabriel, and now he's the start. The unanimous will say starter. So now I think Oregon is 7-1 now. They've played 8 games. He's only started 2 weeks ago was the equal amount that he started ever in college. Now he has surpassed that and started more games this year than in previous years. Which means he's still pretty fresh, all things considered. And we as a fan base got a little spoiled post Cristobal and Herbert that we transferred in Bo Nix and then transferred in Dylan Gabriel, who combined I think played like 1,500 college football games, or maybe less, but I think they're in the 4 figures. Maybe. I can't remember. That can't be right. My math is off. They played probably an aggregate though of 12 years of college football between the two, we'll say. Ugh. Come on, Sins. Give me a break. They were veterans, obviously. Played a lot of college football. They've seen everything. They know what they're doing coming in. They just got to learn the playbook. We have Dante who learned the playbook, and learned some more things under Dylan Gabriel. But he's still fresh and actually playing live snaps. So I think at this point, he is probably going to stay another year before going to the NFL. I think it would be premature if he went to the NFL this year. If he had came in and dominated and got Oregon a national championship, he would easily be going to the NFL. But at this rate, he's probably going to be staying another year, and I think that's a good thing. Obviously, selfishly, as a fan, you want to see him play for Oregon another year, but I also want to see him succeed in the NFL. And so whatever benefits him in his future, he should probably be doing what he needs to do in the present to assure that future. And he's had games this year where he has not played very well, specifically the past 3 to 4 weeks. It has been up and down, aside from a very dominant September. He played very well against Penn State. That was, at the time, his sort of magnum opus as a starter, and that's why it meant a lot to him, that game, and the reaction they had. Then a bye week, and then Indiana did not play very well. Bounced back against Rutgers, played very well. This game, not so well, and then got, knocked out of the game because of his bloody nose. But that is to be expected with a guy who is sort of pretty fresh in the game still. I mean, only now, basically as of a couple weeks ago, has Dante played a college football season as a starter. He's now started 12 games as a college football player. So he's still young in that regard. And so you're going to have those ups and downs. And the importance of where he ended up, a.k.a. UCLA versus Oregon, and the coaching staff that is there, Dan Lanning versus Chip Kelly at the time, is how low, how up will those ups be versus how down will those downs be? If you can relegate his downs to being down and bad, but not career or season for the team ruining, then that's good. That's something you can build up upon. And if his ups are as up as they can be, then that's just icing on the cake. And the same goes for every other position on the field with Corey Moore, with Kenyon Sadiq, and then on the flip side with Finney, who, again, I just can't say enough good things about. And I can't believe that I saw what I saw when I first saw him. Aaron Flowers, Ife Obadewu, all those guys on that side of the field that are also freshmen. And even Dylan Thieneman, who did start and was basically an All-American at Purdue last year, he's still only a sophomore. And he came to a new school and he's projected to be an All-American, sure. But again, he's still young, all things compared. The same strategy goes with that is, can we mitigate the lows and can we put gas on the fire that is the highs with these guys? And oftentimes with young guys, of course, consistency is the thing. And consistency is learned, as you can tell by my YouTube channel. Consistency is learned. It's not something that's necessarily inherent. And the only way to learn that consistency is putting them out on the field and letting them play. So that is the issue, not issue in the pejorative term, but that is the strategy that was going into this college football season. They have the talent. They have the abilities. Now, can we breed consistency out of them? And that's why the term is breed consistency, because it's created, it's formed, it's worked on. It's not inherent. So the idea is this year is to see how far you can take these guys with their ups and at the same time build that consistency below, in hopes that maybe you'll catch lightning in a bottle this year, but you're building towards next year and the year after with these guys. So, all that to say is the expectation of this year, a lot of people talked about, like I said, College Football with Sam, I think, had a great analysis preseason of the team, where his ceiling was 12-0 undefeated, and the floor was 8-4, where there was a lot of youthful flaws that have taken place to create that floor. Now, most Oregon fans think that the floor is probably about 10-2, maybe 9-3. And I think that also is a rational take on that. I think people underestimated Indiana this year. They thought last year was kind of a fluke. And then as the season went on, I'm like, oh, crap, this was the game that we thought Penn State was going to be. And then we ended up losing. So I think that was sort of a game that we did not expect to drop. Or at least drop in the way that the team did. And then now after this performance against Wisconsin, a lot of people preseason thought Iowa might be that trap game. And now it's seemingly like, ooh, it really might be that trap game. And then you have USC playing better and Washington, who is in good shape, where if Washington keeps winning, even though they're unranked, that game might still have playoff, what is the word? I can't believe I keep forgetting this word. It's such a common word, but playoff. There might be a playoff in consequence. I'll use consequence again because I can't remember the freaking word. hanging in the balance. Whoever wins that game might be going to the playoff, and whoever loses might not. So the expectation, though, I think this year for rational Oregon fans, wasn't a national championship. I know people who don't like Oregon like to put on that narrative that we were all natty or bust this year, but I just don't think that was the going narrative. Aside from, the Oregon fan Twitter trolls that like to sort of get a rise out of people, and they'll say that, so then you get the autistic SEC fans get their panties in a bunch. But I don't think that was ever the actual expectation. Most people thought 10-2, get in the playoffs, maybe win a first round game, but likely early, release from the playoffs again this year. Whereas last year it was natty or bust because you had a veteran team of veteran talent coming in, and then they went 13-0, won the Big Ten, and then they shit the bed at the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. That's why that was a super disappointing loss, not just because of the score and how they played, but those were the expectations this year, and they were getting set with each and every week, and they were set in stone post Big Ten championship. But this year, that's not really the going expectations. But you don't want them to play to or under the floor. That is at least the going expectation. Now, there's a difference, like I've said before, of having high standards that, hey, even if you're an uber talented but young team, we still expect greatness and winning. That is perfectly fine to have. And I still do have those expectations as well. Which is why I said what was most disappointing about the Indiana game is not necessarily that they lost, but that they didn't play well. They didn't play to the standard. Go back to my episode before my big hiatus, statements and standards. And that's generally also what Dan Lanning's trying to establish, is a standard of play. And that's, again, the Nick Saban tree that Lanning is tied to. Because that's what Nick Saban was about, was playing to a standard. It's not about if you lose, it's how you lose. So that was sort of the going expectations, I think, for the team preseason. And then over the course of September, they were curb stomping everyone. And while the competition wasn't so great, it was like, okay, maybe there's a run here. And then they beat Penn State when Penn State was number 2 and it was a whiteout in Happy Valley. So the moment of that game was a big moment game, and they came in and won. And they won while learning lessons. They gutted out a win. Dan Lanning's first overtime game. Basically the team's first overtime game, at least as a Duck. Some of those guys might have done it in high school, but it's still different, obviously, as previously discussed. That was like, okay, they're pretty legit. And then who'd they play after that? I can't remember. Shoot. All right, let me pull up Oregon's schedule, because I think they played another game before that bye week leading into Indiana. But let me double check. No, it was. Yeah, okay. Then they had the bye week. That's right. Penn State, bye week, then Indiana. Whoops. Let me force quit that. Bye week, then Indiana. So then everyone got to chill and have a good time during the bye week and prepare for Indiana. No one really looked prepared. Again, rest versus rust. I don't know what's happening with bye weeks and Dan Lanning. seems to be an issue, even if it's 1 week or 4. Don't know what's going on with that. Plus, you got to hand it to Indiana as a team as well. Like I said, sometimes teams are good enough to create a bad game, an off game, when even a team might be already having an off game. Sometimes some teams are just good enough to create or help the bad game along for the other team. And that's kind of what Indiana did. And then they bounce back at Rutgers. You think, okay, here we go. This is the team that we've been expecting. And then they struggle against Wisconsin, all the factors considered. And then moving forward, it's like now the nails are being bit a little tighter on the finger. So, I think as far as this season goes, so far, it's been a general success. We've beaten the teams we should have beat. We've beaten good teams. And even when we had an off day, we were still pretty competitive with teams that were better than us. So that's good. That is a good side. Again, consistency has been an issue the past month or so. Now, the best thing about consistency being able to be created is if you fail at creating it, you can keep trying, and you don't have to just sit there and wallow and moan about not being a consistent person by nature. With every week now is, one, improving play, cleaning up the penalties from the Wisconsin game, hopefully having improved play calling, but also improved execution of those play calls, and not letting teams hang around that probably shouldn't hang around. Granted, Wisconsin was the first team this season that really did that. I mean, Oklahoma didn't really hang around. Oregon State didn't really hang around for long, maybe the first quarter, half of a quarter. Penn State hung around, but again, that was supposed to be a 2 versus 3 sort of matchup, big marquee game. Rutgers had no chance of hanging around. We hung around Indiana, and Wisconsin hung around. So, granted, Wisconsin was really the only team that we were sort of heavily favored to beat that we really let hang around. So that is also a good sign. But now this young team is moving forward to now having to play November football and what that really means. Because here's also the thing. Veteran guys know this over the young guys. When you are a highly ranked team and a good team, let's say a top tier team in the sense that you are on the top half of the conference or the top half of the rankings nationally, there is a target on your back every single play of every single quarter of every single half of every single game of every single week of the entire season. Teams want nothing more than to knock you off that pedestal. They want to be the team that took you down. The big upset. All that type of things. UCLA. They wanted to be that team with Penn State, and they did it. Northwestern saw blood in the water with Penn State as well. They wanted to be that team. They did it. Virginia with Florida State, Stanford with Miami, but the week before that, Louisville with Miami that actually beat Miami. The Crystal Ball Special. Every single team, it does not matter how bad they are, they want to be that team that takes you out. And as the team that is wanting to be taken out, you have to realize that you are the prey, not the predator. The target is on your back. and especially when it comes to November football. Because an early season loss can be erased by the rest of the season being a downward spiral or an upward momentum, playing well the rest of the season. Ohio State last year when they lost to Michigan got lucky only in the sense that that was the last regular season game. It was a rivalry game, and they were 10-2 by that time. So I'm not saying they got lucky that they, even at 10-2, they shouldn't have made the playoffs or won the national championship. I'm just saying they got lucky in the sense that that particular loss in November didn't knock them out. But it was because of how they played the rest of the season that got them in despite that dropping that loss. But now, I think Oregon is in a little bit of a different situation because, yes, USC and Washington are better teams this year. Washington is a rivalry game. But this team in particular, because of how inconsistent that they have been playing, I don't think they can obviously drop more than one game, but they're going to have to, I think, beat Washington and USC for sure. I don't think that can be a game that they drop. And still make the playoff. Or at least make a playoff run, because those are good teams. So even if they're expected to win Iowa and Minnesota and they win those two games, I don't think they still can drop a Washington or a USC. They kind of have to win both those games. But overall, because that's just going to go, I don't know. That's just my initial thought. I might be wrong. I'm open, obviously, to being wrong. But I think the Washington and USC games are definitely more must-wins, even if you win against Minnesota and Iowa. And even if you split those games, maybe it's just because maybe it's because I dislike Washington and I dislike USC. I dislike USC much less than Washington, but those are just teams I don't want to lose to. Maybe that's just why. I could be biased that way. But I think at this point, the last 4 games of this season are must-wins for Oregon. And yes, they can drop one of those 4 games and still make the playoff. But I think this is now learning. Target is on your back now. All 4 of these teams see that they can be the one to knock you out of the playoff or put you on the bubble. And they're going to want to. And they don't care that you're young. So now you got to start playing like a veteran. This is going to be a coaching moment of truth. And not, oh, they're going to fire Dan Lanning if he doesn't, but it's going to be a test of this is what you came to coach for. You have a young, talented team that you can coach through adversity to succeed. That's it. So, and if Oregon is to not make the playoffs, depending on how the rest of the season goes, I would not necessarily call it unsuccessful. It would be disappointing. But it would be disappointing in the way that Oregon gave up that Wisconsin touchdown. Because they were the first, again, of course, It's the first team in 15 quarters, almost 3 full games, to give up a touchdown to Wisconsin. And it was a fluke long pass. Thieneman had an interception, basically, and fell. And the guy ended up catching it. And then our terrible red zone defense. Tosh Upoy definitely has to do something about the red zone defense, especially if you're going to be in big games with big stakes and success on the other end. You got to have good red zone defense. I mean, Ohio State, holy crap. Like, their red zone defense is insane. I don't think they've almost pitched a shutout in the red zone. Like, that's how good they are. Like, that's the kind of red zone defense you need to have. You can have a good defense all around, and obviously that can still get you by, but they got to do something about red zone defense, man. But it's the life of being an Oregon Duck fan. Like I say many times, I quote my friend Kurt, it is a bludgeoning sometimes. And that is also the thing, is like I said last week, there are demons to exercise in this program. And they're having to do that while breaking through the glass ceiling. And it's hard. And sometimes those demons will get you, and you just have to fight back and get them back. And so the least amount of demons you can have while trying to break the glass ceiling, the better. And you can't let new ones come around while you're trying to kill the old ones. And that is a lot to ask of a young team right now, because sometimes it's the young teams that allow those demons to come in. But at the same time, I think they can do it. It's certainly possible. And I know you can say anything is possible with a cop-out, but they're certainly capable of it. They have the potential, but that's why it's potential and not actual, because you have to reach that potential to make it the actual. So overall, though, I guess if we were going to progress report card it, I would put the Ducks at B+, maybe an A- so far this season. I think they have done well enough to meet expectations. Now it's time for them to exceed expectations. And there's still a ways to go to exceed expectations, and we will see. But the future does look bright, and for that I'm excited about it. And the future is bright enough if Lanning were to stay in Oregon. Tongue-in-cheek there a little. Because with the large news surrounding college football, Brian Kelly just got fired at LSU. Billy Napier got fired. James Franklin got fired. Who else? I think there was plenty more that got fired. Anywho, big names, though, in college football got fired. Moody Alabama fans were calling for Kalen DeBoer's head at the beginning of the season. Now suddenly he's a godsend. But for those who actually got fired, Sarkisian might leave. Who knows? But for those who actually got fired, obviously everyone is speculating about Dan Lanning taking one of those jobs, like they've done the past 2-3 years. And, of course, you have SEC fans trying to troll Oregon fans about Dan Lanning leaving and going home, if you will, to the Southeastern Conference. Because Oregon is just a stepping stone university. That's the narrative they're trying to push. And while that is true for some time, at least post Mark Helfrich, that was not true for a very long time, basically since the inception of Oregon's program in 1894. It was actually very insular, and they always try to hire from within, and they always like to have long-tenured coaches. The recent coaching carousel through Oregon was an anomaly. It was the exception, not the rule. That was the reason why they took a chance on Lanning, so they can bring the rule back. But let me go ahead and give a lot of you out there in the Midwest or the Southeast, and let me sort of educate you on the West Coast and those of us out here west and what the culture is. Now, I understand the stereotype of the granola hippie that surrounds Eugene and the rest of the West Coast, like LA and San Francisco and Seattle and Portland in particular. And granted, there's some truth to that. I grew up in Eugene. My grandparents lived their whole lives basically in the Bay Area. I now live in San Diego. I've lived in Portland for a year, my freshman year of college. I have a grandparent that lives in Olympia, Washington, so we visited Seattle a lot. There is some truth to that stereotype. But there's also something else that is a part of the West Coast culture. The Oregon Trail. It's called the Oregon Trail for a reason. Because I went to Oregon. And it wasn't just the Oregon Trail. It was the entire West Coast. Go west, young man. There's a reason why they are called the Portland Trail Blazers. It's not just a cool name. It's not just a cool uniform. And it's not just a cool way to make a joke about the early 2000s teams and their issues with the law in the Jail Blazers. And I understand the East Coast and their traditions and their tradition of being the progenitors of history. Many of their families, a lot of the old money people from that area, daughters of the American Revolution, members of the family that were part of the Founding Fathers. And for that out west, we have gratitude towards you. But here's the thing about culture on the left coast, on the west coast, on the west side of the Rockies. The Oklahoma Sooners as well. Sometimes the right decision is blazing your own trail. That is what we do out here. And that is sort of part of a lot of American culture, because even the traditional founder types, they came from Britain in search of religious freedoms on the British colonies on the east coast of what eventually became the United States. Blazing new trails, pioneering, discovery, the call of the wild. That is still embedded in the culture of the West Coast. Which is why a lot of people don't understand why Oregon tapped in to new uniforms, building new facilities, trying new things, blazing the trail. That's the mindset that we have over here. We have what works. Let's go find out what else works. And we bring what used to work along with us to the new thing that works. And Dan Lanning gets that. That's why he's a fit for us at Oregon. He gets that. Now, he very well could eventually leave to the SEC and go home to the SEC. And I don't think a lot of people would begrudge him that. Understood. The tradition of winning or whatever is in the SEC. And Dan Lanning could be a successful coach in that conference. But for now, he's blazing a new trail. He understands that mindset of breaking through, finding the new thing you can build upon, building something from nothing. Do you realize the difference? If Lanning ever gets Oregon to that national championship game and win the national championship game, what that says for his legacy as a coach versus replacing Nick Saban and winning a title at Alabama, going to LSU, winning a title at LSU, going to Florida, winning a title there, going to Ole Miss, any of those, Texas, any of those teams in the SEC that have won titles or multiple titles before, had, like Alabama, multiple eras of dynasties, the Bear Bryant era, the Nick Saban era. He would just be another guy. He would be another coach that led to another SEC team to another championship, on to the next coach that can do that thing. And because Dan Lanning has the mindset that is the same as the mindset on the West Coast, he understands. And sometimes for guys like him, the best decision is to break new ground somewhere else. We build a lot here, a lot of construction. That's building new ground, literally. You're creating new retail space for more people, more housing for people to move to, so on and so forth. You are building, growing, expanding, innovating. Silicon Valley is on the West Coast. Not for probably much longer, but for now, on the West Coast. Sometimes it's fine to follow your father's footsteps. But sometimes it means something a little different to make your own path. And it doesn't mean you leave the father's business. Maybe you'll take your father's business to the next level. But sometimes you have to blaze your own trail. And that's what Dan Lanning understands. And he's a part of the community. He lives in the general neighborhood, not far from my brother-in-law and my sister, who are Beaver fans. But he's a part of the community. His kids are part of the community. I mean, seriously, how many times, if you're asking a girl out on a date, does she have to say no until you finally stop asking? And I'm not talking about the times where the girl's like, no, I was going to say no or yes the next time. I was just going to see how much you'd fight for me. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, how many times does someone have to tell you no or send the message of I'm not interested before you finally understand that they're not interested? And I think that's where we're at right now with all this talk about Dan Lanning going through the coaching carousel this year. And hey, if all of us Duck fans are crazy wrong and he ends up leaving tomorrow, that sucks. That really sucks. And that's a bummer because that would probably mean that we wouldn't like Dan Lanning anymore. But I think the message is rather clear that he's not interested. And I think at this point, this is just the media companies trying to stir up stuff that they can talk about. Because otherwise, they have nothing to talk about. Because Lanning already used these rumors from past years to renegotiate his contract, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I thought he got a contract extension at some point, but who knows? I don't really care that much to be that much of an insider to know with any certainty. But he's pretty locked in, both financially and personally. So I think this is just a way for media to get stuff to talk about and generate headlines and clicks. And then, of course, it's for the rest of the fans in the world to troll Duck fans to maybe build up some sort of concern that he's leaving. At this point in time, I'm not super concerned. And it seems highly unlikely, slim to none, that he is going to leave. And leave anytime soon. So, I think that is going to be it for the show today. I hope I covered everything that I possibly can cover. And we will go into another bye week this week. I think it is much needed for the fans and their blood pressure to get a bye week. Hopefully we can turn this sort of bye week demon around and come back with the rest instead of the rust. And play better and build on it and have a little bit of a reset and regrouping and get back to work and make a run in November to hopefully make that run in December, January. But I don't think that overall I agree with George Reister. This is not cause for panic. Right now, as it stands, we are right where we need to be to succeed. Now you just have to execute. And all that means is we will see come November and each and every week what things will look like in the future. But for now, we will take that bye week off and see how everything looks. I will not try to take the bye week off and let things slide out of control again. I am still going to come up with shows. And again, I will try my best to be more proactive in telling you when those live streams are happening or the shows will be uploaded. But I will come back with more things to talk about Duck football wise. So thank you for watching, and go ahead and leave comments and everything below to maybe discuss multiple different things and more things further and just have that conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show or the channel. And if you like things not duck related, I will have not duck related videos coming in the near future, not immediate, but near future. And I hope you watch and enjoy those as well. They will mostly be in the storytelling sort of format, and like documentaries or general videos along those lines. But for now, that is all I have to say. And I will see you when I see you next. I'll see you there, or I'll see you another time. Thank you for watching, and go Ducks.
Foot race to their sideline. Touchdown, Oregon!